Mr. Bousquet, you've followed the Caribbean's foreign policy shifts for years, and you've had a front row seat to major changes in international relations, right? So when you think back on your experiences with China, are there any particular moments or encounters that really stayed with you?
Yes, there are many. At a time will not allow me to complete, but my lasting ones I can recall immediately are my several visits to the Forbidden City. The only ones that I took a maglev train from Beijing to Shanghai, visiting Hong Kong for one day, where I was able to observe that there's no space for anything to be built anywhere. The way the bund in Shanghai, that region, helped reshape the city over time. And my favorite province in China, I will admit, is Xiamen in Fujian province, from the simple standpoint that it's the most tropical and Caribbean part of China, in my experience, with sea and sand, beaches, hills and valleys, trees and flowers like every Caribbean nation, and from where we can also see the Taiwan region of China. Like every other Caribbean region, I said, it has the features that we grew up with. And we also, in my case, can recall several visits to Sichuan, which is China's spice capital, where one can recall seeing spices sold like little colorful mountains on roadsides, also experiencing the effects of earthquakes there. A lasting memory was a conference cruise hosted by the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries. And that took place over 3 days on the Yangtze River, with visits to the Three Gorges Dam. I spent a day in Chongqing, a city of hills and mountains, and a media workshop with Victor Gao, who is still very much in the international news today. He was a former translator for Deng Xiaoping. My regrets include not having visited a major media house, especially CGTN's out-of-the-box headquarters.
I didn't expect you to have such rich experiences in China. So, building on that personal perspective, let's look at the bigger picture here. You are
Yes.
speaking from a quite unique position, coming from Saint Lucia, a country that has yet to establish diplomatic relations with China. How would you describe China's approach to working with Latin American and Caribbean countries from that vantage point, and what sets it apart from the way other major powers engage with the region?
Well, certainly, I think that China has been going on a good track in its ties with Latin America and the Caribbean. And I can see that what is taking place is implementation, even in advance, of the principles around President Xi Jinping's global cooperation and security initiatives launched in March 2023, if I recall properly. So we are seeing the Global Cooperation Initiative taking place, and the Global Security Initiative, while it has not been put in place as designed, the current state of international diplomacy, losing out to militarism, is one that we have to also take into consideration. But certainly, building global development cooperation with more investment in new areas in this region, including, for example, agro and energy industries, health and education, science and technology, environmental sustenance, and climate change adaptation. In terms of other powers, what we are seeing is that other powers seek to impose their political will on us, their neighbors in Latin America and the Caribbean, as part of old doctrines, 200-year-old doctrines. Others also seek to shape the ties according to geopolitical considerations. Other powers seek to dictate to independent states in the Caribbean, particularly and including the 14 Caribbean Community CARICOM member states, the majority of which are small islands, dictating to them what their foreign affairs should be, using sanctions to punish those who seek to de-link from the world bodies they control, like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Other powers are consolidating the control of the region's energy resources in Guyana and Venezuela, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, and Grenada. For example, BP and Shell are fighting over who's going to control the resources in Trinidad and Tobago. ExxonMobil and Hess are in Guyana. Chevron is in Venezuela. Total Energy is the French company that has exploited Africa, is in Suriname. But Washington opposed a Russian company's involvement in Trinidad and Tobago through sanctions, while warning Caribbean nations to be careful about building ties with China and raising, concerns about African countries or companies that indicate interest in helping the Caribbean explore its energy resources. So I think the bottom line is that what we have emerging and continuing to grow in the region is an evolving cooperation model in which China cooperation has evolved well in both Latin America and the Caribbean regions, consistent with the principles of mutual benefit between developing nations, not top down, but across and between nations, also reflecting principles of the Global Cooperation Initiative along the modern Silk Roads to different parts of the region through the Belt and Road Initiative. So I see continuity and evolution of a global cooperation model in the relationship between Latin America and the Caribbean and China.